2019 WNBA Finals presented by YouTube TV. And welcome to today's press conference with Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. We'll begin with opening remarks from Cathy, and then we'll turn it over to the floor for questions. Cathy?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here in Washington, tipping off the 2019 WNBA Finals presented by YouTube TV. I want to begin by congratulating the two teams who are here with us today, and quite frankly, all of our playoff teams. The Washington Mystics are making their second straight trip to the finals, and the Connecticut Sun are returning for the first time since back-to-back appearances in 2004 and 2005. Both teams are seeking their first WNBA championship, and seeing how they played all season long, I know we are in for a great series. The playoffs have been quite exciting with competitive play and enormous talent on the court. I hope you all have seen that. We have two of the top vote getters with Elena Delle Donne in our 2019 MVP balloting, with Elena Delle Donne, who was our MVP, and Jonquel Jones from Connecticut, who finished third in that voting. Teams are averaging in the playoffs 85.3 points per game, the highest in our postseason history. In addition, since changing the postseason format in 2016 and seeding teams 1 through 8, regardless of conference, this marks the third time in 4 seasons that the teams with the two best regular season records have reached the finals. I spent a good part of my time as commissioner since mid-July on the road, traveling to all 12 of our markets, meeting with teams, players, fans, media, potential sponsors, supporters, advocates for our league. I've been encouraged by the support that I've seen and the attention people are paying to the W. We attracted over 1.3 million spectators, fans to our arenas this year. With combined average viewership across all networks was up 5%. Merchandise sales were also up 38%. And the WNBA experienced heavy fan engagement across social media and with more than 18 million likes and followers globally across our league, team, and the players' social media platforms. I've received a lot of feedback, as you can imagine, in my 12-city tour, which has been very helpful as we transform this league into a sustainable and profitable business. And I continue to evaluate a series of data that has actually troubled me, and that I wasn't aware of coming into this role. I've learned over the past couple of weeks that only 5% of global investment in corporate sports sponsorships are directed to women's sports, and only approximately 5% of sports media coverage is about women's sports. Yet 84%, I saw a statistic about 84% of people surveyed are interested in women's sports. It was concerning to learn that fans can't easily find our games, whether they are looking on cable TV, social media, or sports websites. You can find other sports with one click. But with the W, you have to make a concerted effort to search. My goal is to get with the decision makers of these organizations to make sure the W is on the radar as they code these things into their programming. These are just a few small examples, but I truly believe there is no better time than now for us to take advantage and take this league to new heights. We welcome those who want to invest in our league that showcases, without doubt, and I've seen this myself, the best athletes in the world. And it's also a league that's empowering women and young girls with our female role models and is in growth mode. My 3 pillars that I talked about in Las Vegas that will lead to this growth actually remain the same after my entire tour. First, further develop the economics of the league. My team and I are working very hard to bring in potential sponsors who share the same commitment as we do in growing women's sports and lifting up women more broadly in society. As part of developing the business, we need more fans in our seats, which is my second pillar. We will be discussing and looking at new, innovative ways to attract more fans to increase fan engagement, including in a more tech-savvy way. And of course, improving the player experience has been my third pillar, utmost importance. And as you're aware, we are in the midst of collective bargaining negotiations. We can continue to have productive conversations and meetings. This remains a top priority for all involved, and we all share the same goals to grow this league and have the athletes in the WNBA receive the recognition they deserve. We can't thank you enough for all your efforts in telling the amazing stories and your in-depth coverage of the W. We greatly appreciate it and urge you to keep telling the great stories of our players and teams and to continue to push your organizations to give these elite women role models the coverage and attention they deserve year-round. With that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Cathy, front row to your right.
And Cathy, Doug Feinberg, the AP. I have a two-part question. If you could give a specific or two on your 12-city listening tour of a positive you heard from people and maybe something that needs to be worked on. The second part is to be a little more specific on CBA. If you guys have been negotiating lately, or you wait until the finals are over, is there a more concrete answer than just we're aware of it and we're obviously a top priority, but is there more to it than just that?
So first on the 12-city tour, a lot of positives. The play on the court, the intensity. I think because of our short season with 34 games coming off the All-Star break, which is when I started my tour, the play on the court, the fan engagement, quite frankly, as I went around the league, the fan experience arena. So there's a lot of good there, Doug. There are challenges though, fans. I mean, I got to meet with lots of fans in lots of cities around their frustrations around, merchandise, their frustrations, again, around the attention, the W, around paying the players. So all the things, again, that are all elements both of the CBA, but also of the pillars of our strategy. And your second question around CBA, again, we're in active negotiations. We're not waiting for the finals to be over, and we continue to look at those pillars there around player well-being, player pay, and obviously player travel experience, which again are all part of my player experience. So, and I think I've shared this with some of you as I was on my tour about how interesting it's been for me coming from a long, over 3 decades in business, around how, during this negotiation, how it's very clear that we all have the same goals here. Again, to lift the players, the player experience, whether it be from travel, health and wellness, or pay. We need an economic model that will sustain this league and make this league thriving for the future. Thank you.
Cathy, to your left, third row.
Cathy, G. Wong, Washington Post. Just your impressions on this building and then more broadly having the WNBA Finals in the nation's capital proper, especially given last season the Mystics were kind of nomads in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think arenas are really important to our fan experience, and since that's one of my 3 pillars, this is a really important. I think you'll see the play today, you'll see the fan experience. I understand, we're going to have a great crowd today. I think it's great to have the finals back here back from last year in the nation's capital, and I really think that this is my 4th time in arena here. Because I did attend a couple of the playoff games in addition to a regular season game, and I think the Monumental Basketball has done a great job of bringing the fan experience into a smaller venue where, the intimacy and the intensity of the play and being, as a fan, being close to the play is a great thing. I think as I look again at other cities, I think some play in bigger arenas, some in smaller arenas, and I think, there's no one size fits all, but I do think that if we work on providing our fan a great experience and adding a little tech savviness and broadening our fan base, I think that's part of the goal, but, very pleased with what I see here in Washington.
Cathy, in the center, third row.
Hi, Cathy. Howard McDowell, New York Times. I'm curious, it's sort of a 2-part question. Terry Jackson put out a statement this morning talking about the fact that it was a waste of time to consider the WNBA's economics compared to the NBA. So I'm wondering if you see it that way, number 1, and number 2, whether you see new investment as a critical part, new investment from the NBA as a critical part to getting ultimately a CBA done that's amenable to all sides.
Yeah, I think, Terry's the head of our Players Association. We've been working hard with Terry to discuss what the right economic model is to fund the things we want to do around player experience. So that's number 1. And I think, I applaud Terry's statement this morning around, how the players are thinking, how we're thinking to make sure that, we reach an agreement that's fair, fair to both parties. And again, I don't view it as fair to both parties. I actually, quite frankly, view it as we have the same goal here to lift the players year round. So I think that's that. And again, I never say everything's possible. But first, you need to transform the economic model of this league in order to get the W's recognition. You heard the statistics that I was most concerned about, that I didn't have on my radar prior to coming into this role. If we can move those and tick those up, and not even saying getting them to 50%, but get them to a real healthy percentage of corporate sponsors, advocates influence in our leagues, more coverage, broader year-round. We've got this opportunity with USA Basketball to be highlighting our players who are all WNBA players throughout the year going into Tokyo 2020 and into our 2020 season. So lots of things pointing north, I'll call it, and lots of positives. So again, these are all things we're thinking about, how we market the league, the sales and marketing capability at the team level, and obviously the media, sports attention, and corporate sponsorships. So all things I think that all come back to driving economics to a higher level so that we can start answering that question with more specifics.
Cathy, to your left in the front row.
Michelle Vogel, ESPN.com. You mentioned, I think, the 5% in terms of global sports sponsorship from the corporate world. That was your world for over 3 decades. What do you think is the biggest impediment to why there hasn't been more buy-in, especially from, not to put the onus on female executives, but that there hasn't been more in general, and maybe specifically women executives having a specific interest in sponsoring the WNBA?
Yeah, it's a great question, Michelle. I think part of this is making sure we have the right narrative and platform to market and sell this league. When you look at, and I was on the other side of the table negotiating sponsorships and what interest that the corporate world would have in an amazingly diverse set of female athletes, role models, college graduates who, you really can activate a sports sponsorship around. So I think it was around the right narrative, talking to the right people in these corporate organizations, and certainly something hopefully that I'm bringing from the business side is to know who to talk to, what the right narrative is that we can market to a corporate to activate against. Those are all the things the team, Christy Hedgepath, Bethany Donovan, myself, we've all been working really hard on honing that, pitching that to corporates, and getting them to essentially sign on to support what I say is not just women's basketball, but women's sports. One thing about my tour in the 12 markets, it hit me and probably midway through the tour that we have this moment in women's sports coming off the USA soccer win. We have this momentum around the WNBA that I felt during my 12-city tour. And then we have this movement around women's empowerment. And that kind of triangle, taking advantage of that from the W's perspective and taking advantage of that, Michelle, in a narrative and a platform with corporates and how they can activate against that and how they then can make their talent platform and raise that for all people, inclusion more broadly, not just the diversity of having a female, supporting female athletes.
Cathy, to your right, standing.
Hi, Cathy. David Aldridge with The Athletic. You stepped in and got travel for Vegas and for Los Angeles to fly private during the playoffs. I wonder what you think is possible short-term going forward from a lead standpoint in terms of that. And also, we never seem to get clarity whether private travel is viewed merely as inconvenient or prohibitive. And I wonder if you could tell us where that line is right now.
Yeah, and obviously we were evaluating, as part of one of my pillars, player experience and player health and wellness and wanting the highest level of play in the playoffs. So when we saw that there was a game 4 to 5 with only 1 day rest with a west to east, not great flight opportunities in commercial, which is required today by the old collective bargaining agreement. And so we evaluated what was the right thing to do when at that point you would only have 4 or so teams left because you're traveling west to east. And so we made that decision to provide the charter flights, which I think was the right decision. And we were evaluating again, would it have had it been needed for the last series, the semifinals, if it had gone to a game 5, because we would have had another east to west, west to east, 1 day, and actually even worse because East Coast time, the game in Vegas would have gotten over quite late. So these are the things, and there you only had 3 teams left. Connecticut had already won, and so you're evaluating again. You want the highest level of play in our playoffs. So there is an economic model that is. Would need to be driven to support that at a broader level. Here's another area where can we get corporates to step in and sponsor that angle of player experience, whether it's broadly travel or whether it's just charters itself. today, again, we don't have the economics to support that broadly. This is an item that, of course, player travel experience is part of what we're negotiating in the collective bargaining. So I think these will continue, at least for now, to be one-off, case-by-case basis to ensure player health and safety and ensure that we're doing the right thing for the level of play we want to present on the court.
Kathy, to your left in the second row.
Jen Hatfield, the High Post Hoops and Her Hoop Stats. Kind of a two-part question for you. I'm curious, one, about your relationship with Adam Silver, how closely you are in contact with him, and then more specifically, your opinion on some of his comments that we should really rethink what the WNBA is and not just make it, I think he said, a lighter version of the NBA.
Yeah, so obviously being in the NBA, WNBA organization, Adam and I speak from time to time regularly. He and I were just on a panel last week and the week before. Nice thing about having this commissioner title is I get invited to be on panels as a commissioner of a major sports league, and it's great to have a woman up there, I believe, in that commissioner seat amongst usually many men. So again, regular contact with Adam, but Adam has empowered the W even before I got there, and certainly with me in the commissioner role, to essentially bring the W, as you said, not the lighter form of the NBA, but to have the W be its own brand, and that's what you saw the team launch the rebrand and the refresh of the brand even before I started, and we're just continuing to be empowered by Adam and the NBA and resourced by them to drive this league to the next level. So that's where we are with that relationship.
Kathy, to your right, standing.
Hello, ma'am. Adam Zelenko with Washington Times. I'm wondering, as you've gone through your first year as commissioner and gotten to know Ted Leonsis, what are you able to say about Ted as a WNBA owner and an advocate for women's sports with what he's done here?
Yeah, I think I've only been in the job 2.5 months, not quite a year yet, but I have had the opportunity to meet with Ted, and obviously 4 trips here, and really impressed with Ted and Monumental's support, not only of the Mystics, but of women's sports more broadly, and the coverage in the Washington press too, which I think Ted has asked for and I think received, which I think is great. And really just, Ted, again, and as well as our other owners, offer a great platform in the business community for the discussion around the W and these elite athletes and these great role models, whether it's the social consciousness they carry or the community mindedness. And I think Ted's been so supportive of the players. It's nice also that, Washington had such a great year and we're dominant offensively. The MVP, and obviously now in the WNBA Finals, so really pleased with the support, by the way, of all our owners, but Ted has been really supportive of the women's basketball here in the nation's capital, as well as more broadly women's sports. And he and I and others were frustrated around why don't we have a better revenue model? Why don't we have more sponsorships? Why don't our players have more endorsement opportunities? Why aren't we covered year-round? Why aren't we talking about our Olympic team, which is all WNBA players, going for their 7th consecutive gold medal next year with a record of 100 wins and 1 loss? So, it's all these things that Ted sees and I see so clearly, the opportunity and the upside of supporting women's basketball in the WNBA and women's sports in society more broadly.
Kathy, front row to your left.
Speaking about the NBA, how will Teresa Witherspoon's position with the Pelicans help the WNBA?
Yeah, I think Teresa Witherspoon's new role with the Pelicans, and obviously she just got inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame, which is fabulous. She's a fabulous spokesperson for our league and a fabulous representative and ambassador for our league. And there's a variety of other women. I think it's a great sign when you see women being appointed to these positions, whether it's in the NBA or other professional sports. I've been, again, attending some sports conferences, and I'm meeting some fabulous women who are rising in the sports ecosystem. And I think Teresa, as well as many others that have been hired over the last year, is a great sign for diversity and inclusion in professional sports. And I think this is great for the next generation of our players today, and one of the reasons I took this job was to make sure I could help our players with their platform after their playing days. And so I think Teresa's appointment, as well as several other WNBA players, is a great signal and sign for diversity in sport.
Kathy, to your left in the third row.
Hi there, I'm Lexa Philby with the Hartford Current. I was wondering, after visiting Connecticut, the franchise there, the Sun, if there's anything that stood out to you about what they've been able to do there and really take advantage of being in what many consider the basketball capital of the country.
Yeah, certainly the women's basketball capital of the country up in Connecticut. Again, I've been so impressed with the passion of the fans, with the entertainment experience in arena, obviously with the the local college there, UConn, having such great success in women's basketball, and therefore you have these passionate women's basketball fans who might even say, men's basketball, what's that? So it's a great environment, and that's why I'm so pleased with the top two teams from the regular season record competing in the WNBA Finals over the next week and a half or so, and it's going to be a great series and a great home court advantage for both teams because of the fan bases and the arena feel. So looking forward to that.
Cathy's second row to your right.
Hi, Mel Greenberg. You might, speaking of New York, critical market that they are, without naming names per se, I know they want to move. Have they given you any idea yet of places they're looking at to play home next season?
Yeah, I think my understanding is everyone knows today the New York Liberty, our New York, based WNBA team is playing up in Westchester. New ownership came in earlier this year, Joe Tsai and his group, and they've now purchased the Barclays Center as well as the remainder of the nets that they didn't own. So again, I know the team, and we've been talking with their team about making a decision around where the New York Liberty would play. You might have seen in our draft lottery that the New York Liberty got the #1 draft pick, so that's exciting for them as well. And I think for all 12 of our franchises, I would say this, but particularly New York, where I happen to have lived since 1992, we need a viable, thriving fan base in New York City, one of the biggest cities in this country, to drive the W to the next level. And again, I'd say that about almost all of our cities, but certainly New York's one of them. So we're working with their team, but it's their decision, and we look forward to their decision in a few weeks, I would think.
To the third row to your left, Cathy.
Hi, Cathy. You addressed this a little bit in your opening statements about TV exposure. With your understanding that network obviously has a big say in scheduling, would it not have served the league better to have game one not on an NFL Sunday? And how much is that part of what you want to get done if you don't want to have conflicts with the NFL going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one which, coming in new to sports from the business world, I had the same question about scheduling, whether it's on an NFL Sunday or a college football Saturday. And it seems once you get into the fall, and now you'll have Major League Baseball playoffs, when you get into the fall, it's a tougher time. Now, if we want to expand our game and grow our game and expand our season and maybe add to the number of games, or next year we have to take a month off for the Olympics because we support our WNBA players on the USA basketball team. So this is it's more complex than we all think to get the scheduling right. I will say what I was most impressed with here in Washington was the Washington Post sports page the day after Washington, the Mystics clinched to go to the finals. The same day, the Washington Nationals clinched the playoff spot, and thank you to the Washington Post, had the Mystics as the lead story on the sports page because I happened to be here for some meetings that day, so I was proud of that. But we do need to compete with other sports. I also think to the extent people are watching sports and channel surfing, and that's why I'm so obsessed with making sure you can find our games and you know where they are and when they are. I think the more people are watching sports, talking sports, that's helpful to us too. So we are competing in a very, very crowded entertainment market more broadly. But that's why with your help and with the help, again, of our advocates, influencers, sponsors, et cetera, endorsers, I think we can actually drive the broader recognition of the play on the court, because nobody's debating how great the product on the court is. So looking forward to, again, continuing to compete with all these venues today, 3 o'clock. But hopefully people are watching sports, watching football, and they'll turn to ESPN, and 3 o'clock they'll see a great WNBA game.